Shalom Aleichem to all the Barabachs out there. That was 4 languages covered, by the way. We're going international today. Hamas is back in the news, everybody. Yay! Now, our older audience knows Hamas, but for our younger audience, Hamas was a jihadi boy band formed in the 80s. They had a multi-platinum selling album, Marshmallows Over School Bus Fire. And with the hit singles such as You Make My Underwear Go Boom, Blood on the Street Floors, You Make My School Bus Go Boom, Everything Goes Boom When You're Around Me, Why Do Birds Go Boom When You're Near, and Boom Boom Boom. Boom Boom Boom! Allahu Akbar! So, now the band suffered during the 90s, but they had a strong comeback in 2006 when they became the official government of Gaza Strip after an election, which led to them stopping any more elections from happening. Last year, as some of you might remember, the lead guitar player, after a decade of struggle with illicit substances and human shields, shot himself in the face and died like a bitch. After an off-and-on feud with their record label Islamic Republic of Iran, they are now back in the news with a new and exciting campaign. For that, we're gonna throw to our Meshuggah correspondent, Daniel Bortman. Where are they now?
Thank you, Sia. Well, right now, what Hamas is doing is they're organizing a 6-week protest in the Gaza Strip called the March to Return.
We'll march to a place so extreme.
The March to Return is supposedly a peaceful protest designed to resettle refugees. There's only one thing wrong with that narrative. Everything. So what is the right to return? Honestly, it is a code word for the ethnic cleansing of Jews out of Israel. It is a complete non-starter in the peace process because the right of return refers to the fact that all Palestinians have the right to return to whatever homes they were living in pre-1948. Let's not mention that under 5% of the Palestinians actually lived in those homes in 1948, but there's even more wrong with this narrative. First of all, when you say, do the Palestinians have a right of return to their lands in modern-day Israel? Do the Jews who were kicked out of places like Hebron, where there was a massacre in the 20s, do they get to go back to Hebron, a historically Jewish town with tons of Jewish artifacts and sites?
What about the 900,000 Jews that were kicked out of Arab countries during that time?
What about them? Nearly 1 million Jews
Are Arab countries going to give them back their lands?
Now, you might be saying, oh, they don't deserve the rights because Israel started this war. The Palestinians are completely innocent. Well, that also has no grounding in historical reality. Just look at the numbers. So, the war started May 15th, 1948. That's when Israel declared independence and 6 Arab nations attacked it. However, the partition plan was announced November 29th, 1947. So in between November 29th and May 15th, before any Arab armies marched on Israel, over 2,500 Jews were killed by Palestinian Arab militias. Okay? It wasn't just
a war.
It was a
basically.
War. Now, if you want to say, well, it was the evil Israelis and Zionists who kicked all these Palestinians off the land, and they should return no matter what. Again, that doesn't hold up. Just listen to the thoughts of the current Palestinian president, Dr. Mahmoud Abbas. And we say doctor because he did go to 10 years of Holocaust denial school to get that PhD.
No, that's for real. That's his PhD.
The Arab armies entered Palestine to protect the Palestinians from the Zionist tyranny, but instead they abandoned them, forced them to immigrate to leave their homeland, imposed upon them a political and ideological blockade, and threw them into prisons, similar to the ghettos in which the Jews lived in Eastern Europe. That was Mahmoud Abbas before he became a politician. You might be thinking, hey, this is crazy talk. The Arab armies forced the Arab Palestinians to leave their land? That makes no sense. Well, when you think of it in context, it makes a lot more sense. In 1948, 6 Arab armies had declared war on Israel. No one thought this would go on too long. They had millions of people, tons of weapons. Israel had barely any weapons, no international support, and was strung together with a few crippled Holocaust survivors. They all thought it would end very quickly. So the Arab armies bribed the Arab Palestinians to leave their land so they could then roam in, make war with the Zionists, finish them off, and everyone would be able to come back in happy-go-lucky. The only problem is they weren't able to destroy all the Zionists.
Aww. The second problem with this narrative is the term peaceful protest. Hamas is a terrorist organization that uses children and civilians as human shields just to win propaganda battles against Israel. That's why you see all these children in these demonstrations. This is not a protest. Nothing that Hamas does can be defined as peaceful.
Especially when you're shooting at the Israelis while doing it.
Most of the casualties of the last few days have been members of Ezzedin Qassam Brigade, which is the military arm of Hamas. Hamas is leading and organizing the whole event. This is a military operation. This is not a peaceful protest.
Okay, let's just say this is a grassroots organization. Let's take Hamas out of this. They didn't spend $10 million organizing this. They didn't advocate for it. They aren't the official government. Their military members aren't shooting at the Israelis during it.
Most of the casualties weren't members of Hamas.
Let's just take all that out. This is still an illegitimate protest. It's not a protest. What the March to Return is they're advocating for thousands of Palestinians to cross the border into Israel and march in force against the Israelis' will for the right to expropriate their land without compensation. That is usually called a war. Wars happen when populations march into other countries to try and take their stuff. That's called war. So even if this was put on by Cinderella, this is still a legitimate act of war. The goal here is to get as many Palestinians killed on May 15th. That is the end of the March to Return, and it's also the 70th anniversary of Israel. What Hamas wants to do is flood the media with images of dead Palestinians who were killed for no reason other than the fact that they were trying to invade Israel for the right to ethnically cleanse it from its Jewish population. And the media will eat this up. Look at The Independent. Look at this article they wrote. Refugees? So now the Gazans are refugees too? They have self-governance. The real refugees are supposed to be the Palestinians living in camps in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. Look up how they live. It will show you something you didn't know. So as we said, the March of Return is a standard Hamas military operation. If you want to learn more about how Hamas operates, their MO, their charter, what it involves, we made a video about it called Beginner's Guide to Hamas. You can watch it by clicking the link below.
Well, I'm going to put it up here just to spite you. But I think the best way to summarize how we feel is, first we have to mention that we believe Palestinians are suffering here too. But the media is pointing at the wrong culprit. If you really want to know who caused a lot of the pain and suffering for Palestinians, we're going to conclude this video with a quote from the former Prime Minister of Syria, who talks about the whole situation. Since 1948, it is we who have demanded the return of the refugees, while it is we who made them leave. We brought disaster upon 1 million Arab refugees by inviting them and bringing pressure on them to leave. We have accustomed them to begging. We have participated in lowering their morale and social level. Then we exploited them in executing crimes of murder, arson, and throwing stones upon men, women, and children. All this in the service of political purposes. Thank you.
If you guys like these videos and you're not afraid of your
Thank you
overlords
so much.
at Google, then
We
please
truly
like,
appreciate
hopefully
all your
subscribe,
support.
click share.
This means
If
a lot
you
to
might
us.
lose some friends, but just
Our
to go for it
YouTube,
anyway.
our Twitter,
You can
our
MySpace
Facebook,
me.
and
Send me a
Patreon.
fax at 12345.